Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel and welcome to Central Germany 1813. The French are in full retreat with the Allies, the Russians and the Austrians in this case, pushing them hard. And it's here that the Bavarians under General Werder decide to make their stand. We've got a brigade of them stuck in here and they will be holding on for as long as possible until the French can try and relieve them. So unusually for these games, it will be General Dan who is commanding the combined forces of the Bavarians and the French today, whereas I will be commanding the Russian and Austrian allies. So we're going to go into the armies now and we'll see how they stack up. So here we have the army of the Allies, Russia and Austria combining as they had in 1805 to bring death to Napoleon. Now, unusually for me, I will be using the Allies today. General Dan has taken on the role of the French, so that means that the Russians and Austrians are mine to command. I'm looking forward to that tasty stamina 4. Let's see how it goes. So I've got two brigades of Russian infantry here. I've got the brigade of the 4 battalions at the front. Those are made up of 2 regiments, each of 2 battalions. And then behind them, which is going to form a bit of a reserve, is the Guard/Grenadier brigade, of 2 battalions there. And then 1 battalion of the Pavlovsky Grenadiers and 1 of the Prehabensky Life Guard. So that's the Russian infantry. I've got a large battery of artillery that's going to accompany them here. There we are. We'll try and take my false teeth out first. And then we've got on the other side the Austrian infantry. 4 large battalions of infantry here, making 1 brigade. And they will be 2 regiments of 2 battalions each. So you can see we've got the 1st battalion on the left and then the 2nd battalion's on the right. So that's the infantry. They will also have a battery of cannons to accompany them. Now we're going to have the Austrians and the front brigade of Russians on the table with the Guard Grenadiers in reserve. So here we have the combined forces of France and Bavaria. We've got a brigade of 4 Bavarian infantry line units. They will be starting on the table, and the French that you can see scattered around them, they will be coming on as reserves. Now, the French slightly outnumber the Allies in terms of artillery. They've got 2 batteries. They will also have a horse artillery battery when their cavalry arrives. So we've got, as I say, 4 battalions of Bavarian infantry, and then we've got 2 regiments, each of 3 battalions of French. We've got light infantry here on the right, and then we've got a line regiment here on the left. So that's the French. So here are the Allied cavalry. Now, it's all well and good having infantry, but let's be honest, it's the cavalry we care about. The Russians have a brigade of heavies. They've got a unit of dragoons at the back, 2 units of cuirassiers at the front. The Austrians have brought 2 large units of cuirassiers. So let's see how the Allied cavalry will do. I'm not used to having so much cuirassiers here. Against the British, I tend to use lights or dragoons. So let's see how these guys go. The battlefield after deployment, looking from the Russian positions. Now we see the Bavarians have dug in, so the Russians have put their large artillery battery on the hill as they have to in the rules, although to be honest it's not a bad place for them anyway. Coming up the road is the 1st Russian brigade, and in holding the centre are the 2 large regiments of Austrian cuirassiers on the right. And I forgot to mention these guys earlier on are a unit of Jaegers at the front and then 4 battalions of infantry behind them. Coming over to the French side, now I should say that the French have cavalry as well. We'll be rolling for them to come on as part of the reserves. Looking from the French side, we've got a battery of French guns here on the raised road. And then we've got the dug-in Bavarians here ready to redeploy and see which way the Allies are going to come. So that's deployment. The French are going to start potentially arriving from probably about turn 3 or 4. But let's see how it goes. I should say the Allies will be going first, as they are the attackers. The mission is to break the enemy. So this is going to be a bit of a holding action from the French. We'll say if they can hold on for 8 or more turns, then the Allies will consider to have not won the battle. Not necessarily lost, but not won the battle. They will have been delayed long enough for the French to either get away or create a stronger defensive position further down the road. So, with the Allies up against the clock, that is the end of turn 1. The 2 cannons fired at the Bavarians in the fortifications, but rolled 2 5s, which was not enough, because I was shooting over the heads of my own men, and I'm at long range. I was hitting them on 6s. This brigade here, they failed their order, or the 2nd regiment did, but they got to move forward 1 move anyway, due to their column of companies. Here in the centre, the Austrian cavalry commander ordered the 1st unit forward, failed on his 2nd order. And here the Austrians, they ordered the Jaegers forward, who haven't shot yet, they're about to, and failed to order the infantry battalions. I'm going to check the Jaegers are in range, and then we'll see if they are, then we'll come back for the live shooting at that artillery, because I've got rifles, these guys. Oh, it turns out they are just out of range. I did order them to move twice, but I only passed the roll by 1. So that's the end of the Russian and Austrian allied turn, and now we go on to the Bavarian turn. This is the end of Bavarian turn 1, and not a huge amount happened. Count Werder rolled his command. He rolled an 11. Very nearly a blunder, but not quite. As Napoleon said when he was fighting for the French, I have made him a count, but I cannot make him a general. So the Bavarians stay where they are. To be honest, they're not in a terrible position anyway. The artillery fired at the Cuirassiers. They rolled a 2, they needed a 5, so nothing doing there. So that's the end of Bavarian turn 1, but they don't necessarily need to do anything. They've just got to hang on for the reinforcements. Turn 2 for the Allies has finished, and that was a much better move for them. The Jaegers moved forward. They haven't fired yet, because I forgot to fire them again, so I'll do those live on camera. The infantry moved forward once, the Cuirassiers closed up, and the Russians on the left, they surged forward. 2 moves they moved. Now the artillery fired, missed again. Now the Jaegers, sorry Dan, can you just measure to see if I'm within 12 of the artillery? I suspect I'm probably not, but nope, so I'm not within 12, so that's just 1 dice, because they are a small unit. They do have rifles, so let's see if this can be good. They are firing at skirmishers, so they're going to need 5s to hit. They miss. They are sharpshooters, so they get to reroll that one for a 6, which is a disorder. Very nice. So Dan rolls his save of a 6, of course he does, but they are disordered, so that's a good start. So we're doing something a little bit different for the reinforcements in this one. What we're going to do is we're going to roll the number of dice for the game turn. So turn 2, 2 dice. Turn 4, 4 dice, so on and so forth. If General Dan can roll a double, any double, then the units can start being rolled for. So we're going to have the light cavalry going to be rolled for on that turn. Once they're on, then we can roll for either the infantry or the heavy cavalry, and then the remainder after that. So can General Dan roll the double? Oh, no. It's close, though. 3 and 2 is not bad. But there are no Frenchies on the horizon. So, with a rush of blood to the head, the Bavarians have charged the Russian infantry. Now, Dan was a little unsure how this works. I don't think he's ever charged anyone in Black Powder before, being that he's normally the British. But the Russians get their closing fire. So they get 1 shot, because they're effectively in an attack column. So I'm at point-blank range. I need a 3+ to hit. A 6 would be very, very good. It's a 4. So it's not a 6, but it is a hit. Dan needs to make a saving throw with 3+. 4+. Okay. He rolls a 6. Of course he does. He doesn't care anyway. So Dan is the attacker. He's going to go first. He is rolling 6 dice, and he is hitting me on a 3 because he charged. For 4 hits. Very tasty. I am saving on a 3+. We're going to check that one. So we've checked the rule, and we do indeed get the +1. We weren't sure if it was just the French that got that. So Dan would have got the +1 to his save for the closing fire, but he rolled a 6 anyway, so it didn't make any difference. So he's hit me 4 times. I need to make 4 saving throws of 3+. Let's see how it goes. Oh, hang on. I'm trying to still working this this thing out. Oh, yep, no, there we are. So let's see what sad Napoleon brings me. Oh, 4 saves, all right. So the Russians get to attack back. They have 6 attacks, and they are hitting on 4s because they did not charge. Only 3 hits, which is average, to be fair, but they're nothing above a 4. Now, they are Russians. They have Tough Fighter, which gives them a 4th hit. So Dan's going to roll his saves. He's also saving on a 3+. Oh, 2 go through, and it does make a difference because he rolled a 3 there. So now we're going to do the static combat res. Well, we are both supported to the rear, so it's going to be a loss to the Bavarians, and Dan's going to roll for their test. So they are just on a straight test. He needs a 7 or less. More, sorry. A double 1, though. they explode. Now, he's rolled for the unit behind them. Because the unit in front of them was destroyed, any supporting units have to test as well. And on an 11, they are super standing. That 1st battalion clearly not very popular with the 2nd battalion guys, but that unit has been destroyed. So that could have gone better for General Dan. He's lost one of his units. I do have a consolidation move to make, but I'm actually just going to stay where I am. They are going to charge the Bavarians next turn, hopefully, and we'll see how that goes. But they're going to stay where they are. I thought about forming them into line, but the Russians had an old saying, the bullet is a fool, the bayonet is a hero. And we're going to get in there, we're going to give them the cold steel. So that's the end of the Bavarian turn 2. I think they are going to start sending runners to find out where those French cavalry have got to. Now, in what's almost certainly going to be a terrible example of me talking something up, I'm going to charge the Austrian Cuirassiers. I'm going to get their Saxon Garde du Corps on, and they're going to charge the Bavarians who are dug in here. Now, they are probably 2 moves away, so they are going to need a decent roll. They're going to need to roll a 7 or less, sorry, a 5 or less to get that. Let's see how it goes. 5 or less, here it comes. No, it's an 8, so they don't even move once. But it was worth a try. I think it was worth a try. Over here in the distance, you can see that the Russians use their martinets rule, which means that they can't initiative move unless it's to charge. They have done that. Now, that has left them a little bit isolated. You can see there's no Russians to support them. So, I'm going to have to try and order these guys to support them, which is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to order the 2 battalions that are just behind that wood there. In fact, I shall, let's take you over there. Now, the reason I wanted to come over here and show you in a bit more detail is this is something I've spoken about on the channel before. It's about maximising your static combat resolution. What I want to do is I want to make sure that I've got as many bonuses to my close combat result as possible by moving these units up to support them. Now, I can support once to each flank and once to the rear. Now, realistically, I've not got any troops over here, so it's going to have to be 1 rear and 1 flank. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to order the guys on the road first to close up. They're out of range there. And that's because they've got the highest chance of passing because they're on a road. So I'm going to need to roll an 8 or less for this. Now, there's no guarantee it's going to happen, but I can only do it in the best order. So that's a 9. Now, luckily, the Tsar, he has got his stern gaze over here, so I can re-roll that. Now, the Tsar is quite a distance away. He's over 24 away. He is only command rating 7, so he's down to 6 for the distance, back up to 7 for the road. So 7 or less. Oh, it's an 11. So they stay where they are, and that's the end of that brigade. Now, I've not been able to stack the odds in my favour. I'm just going to have to rely on my tough fighter and hope I can bash through those Bavarians. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so now we are getting into the combat with the 2nd of the Bavarian battalions and that unit of Russians. Now, they didn't get supported due to the failed order, so the Bavarians get 1 shot as the Russians charge in. They hit on a 3+. Oh, no good. Okay, so now they get to do their fighting. Well, the Russians charge, they're going to go first, and they're hitting on 3s. For 5 hits so far, it's a good roll. They've got tough fighter. So 6 hits, very, very tasty. Let's see if Dan's saving throws can match that. He's saving on a 3+, and he saves 2. So 4 of those go through. That's very unlucky for Dan there. That's way above average. Dan gets 6 attacks back though. He's hitting on 4s. Let's see how these go on. So he's hit 5 times. Pretty tasty. Let's see how the Russian saving throws go. Oh, they failed 2 this time, so they've taken 2 casualties. So let's pop that dice at the back. Oh, there we are. Now let's see if the static res would have made a difference here. Well, actually, it wouldn't, because the Russians have won the combat anyway, and the Bavarians are 1 over their stamina. So they need to take a morale test at -1. Higher is better. So that's a 7, which goes down to a 6, because they're 1 over their stamina, which means that they will fall back 1 move and become disordered. So that's the end of Allied turn 3. Not a huge amount happened, apart from me driving in that left flank, which is quite a lot, to be honest. But nothing else really happened in the rest of the battlefield. You saw me fail to charge the redoubt, which I'm still really upset about. So we're going to go on to French turn 3. Now, Dan is going to roll his 3 dice this time. See if he can get a double. I'm going to move over to the dice rolling tray. So we've got 2 French turn 3. Dan is rolling 3 reserve dice. Any double is good. No, not this time. We finished the shooting with some artillery at the Kraziers. Again, they missed. And this unit here at the Redoubt, they fired at the Jaegers. Unfortunately, they got 2 misses. I didn't mention last time, they got 2 hits on a 5, and I saved both of them, so that was nice. But we're going to go to this combat here. Now, the Bavarians are both disordered and shaken. So unfortunately, they're going to be hitting me on 6s. Dan, they've got 6 attacks, though. So let's see how this goes. They might get 1 or 2, you never know. That's a cock dice, that one, yeah. Roll that one again. No hits. The Russians are hitting back on 3s because they won the last round of combat. So that's only 3 hits there. They do have Tough Fighter, though. You know I love my Tough Fighter for a 4th hit. So it's 4 saves, now of 4+ for the Bavarians. So they lose 1. Now, let's see how much difference this makes. Well, the Russians cause 1 casualty. They have no supports. The Bavarians cause no casualties, but they have a unit supporting them to their flank. So they get 1 as well. So the combat is now actually a draw. But because the Bavarians are shaken, they must still test. So unluckily for Dan, they've got a test. But it just goes to show that having an isolated unit like that can be something of an issue. Dan has rolled a 10, which means that they fight again next turn. I should say as well that Dan did try and turn this unit around in case this unit was defeated and my Russians could get into their rear or flank. But because the Bavarians lack initiative, they had to test, and unfortunately Dan failed the test. So that's the end of French-Bavarian turn 3, although it should just be Bavarian turn 3 at the moment. The Austrians and the Russians are swarming forward. Let's see how turn 4 goes. So once again, we rolled this combat, but we did it off camera. The Russians suffered 1 casualty, the Bavarians suffered 2, which would have been a draw because the Bavarians were supported to their flank, but because they were shaken, they needed to test. Now, interestingly, the Russians have taken 3 casualties. They would also normally have been shaken, but because they're Russians, they have a 4th point of stamina, and that makes them even deadlier. So they can still be free to act, and they are going to move, but they're not going to do much. They're just going to change formation and threaten the flank of those Bavarians. Now, I'm not expecting them to do a huge amount. The rest of the army didn't really move that turn. So I'm not expecting them to do much, but hopefully, if the Bavarians fail their order again, they might be able to charge into the flank, do some casualties before being damaged themselves. So I think this is going to be the most crucial roll of the turn. We're now on French turn 4. Dan's going to roll his 4 dice, see if we can get a double. We can, double 5. So the Hussars are available to move on this turn. Hussars have finally turned up. Huzzah! And they have come on. 2 regiments have come on here. On 1 move, 2 moves, and came on from the table edge here, moving up to flank this battalion here. Now, there were some crucial activities happened near the redoubt. The Bavarians managed to form square and put 2 shots into the Russians, which didn't cause any casualties, but it did disorder them. That's absolutely massive. In my turn, these guys were planning on automatically forming square, and then they were going to be able to fire at the Hussars and the battalion here. But now, because they're disordered, they can't move. There's only one thing they can do, and it's a disordered retreat, and I'm 50-50 of whether I'm going to or not. We'll find out when we do the end of Russian turn 5, but that was the end of French turn 4. Russian turn 5, and these guys, they didn't do anything. I didn't retreat them. These guys formed square, fired 2 shots at the Hussars, and completely failed to do anything. It was very embarrassing. The Kraziers once again refused to charge the redoubt, but the Austrian infantry moved forward, the Jaegers taking up position in the woods. They fired at the artillery, did nothing. The single shot from the column did shake them, however. Sorry, it disordered them. It didn't shake them, it disordered them. They passed their save on a 6, I believe. The Bavarians in the redoubt were also disordered with a shot from that column as well. I think it was probably the guy who killed LaSalle is in that column somewhere. So if that battalion ends up being destroyed, I'm not going to be too sad. I'm not going to lie. But let's go for the French turn 5. Now, luckily, the Hussars are going to be in the flank of the Russians here. I'm not going to be able to form square. It's going to be a very, very bad day to be in that 1st battalion. So we go to French turn 5. He's rolling 5 dice. Let's see if he can roll a Yahtzee. No, no, absolutely not. So Dan's going to either bring on his Cuirassier Brigade or his French Infantry Brigade. What are you going for, Dan?
Well, I think I should get the Infantry Brigade for the double, and then the Cuirassiers for the triple.
I agree. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Wait, what are you going for then, Dan? Okie dokie. The infantry are going to be coming on. What a turn for the French. They have turned up in their droves. 6 battalions of French infantry pounded up the road and next to it. And what a turn for the French shooting. The battalion in column here fired 1 shot at the Austrians and caused a casualty with some support from the artillery. But more importantly, they became disordered. The disordered Bavarians fired at the units to their front, caused no casualties, but they caused a disorder. This is very bad news indeed for the Austrians. Their attack stalling. Now, normally, you could just move these guys through and charge anyway, but I don't like doing that, so they're going to hold up the attack. They're being disordered. This is very, very bad news indeed for the Austrians, but let's see if the Russians can actually make up for it, because they probably can. Bad news for the Austrians, normally good news for everyone else, but there you go. So let's see how it goes on Allied turn 6. I should have mentioned as well that the Russian battalion that was here got flank charged by the, I think it's the 5th Hussars, those ones. Let me have a look on the flag. 2nd Hussars. Oh no, 2nd Squadron, whoever it was. Anyway, they defeated them in combat, but did not destroy them. I managed to roll high enough that they pulled back, and they're now behind these 2 battalions here. Nice and safe, so we may be seeing them later on. So we are at the end of Russian turn, well, Allied, I should say, turn 6. Now, something I've noticed, actually, is I'm doing a lot more of these videos from the French and Bavarian side of the table than I am from the Allied side of the table. That's because we are streaming forward. These 2 battalions were disordered. It's the end of my turn, so they are no longer disordered. The Cuirassiers finally moved forward. I did try and charge the Hussars with them, but they only passed 1 order, so they didn't quite have the range. These guys here, they rolled a blunder, which moved them to their left, and they started hugging the building. The square over here was hitting on 5s. It caused 1 hit on the Hussars, but it was saved. 1 hit on these Hussars, which was also saved. Oh, no, he didn't, no, sorry. No, he caused 1 on them and missed these guys altogether. This unit of Hussars still has 2 casualties on them. The artillery, over on the hill, finally found their range, causing 1 casualty and a disorder on the Bavarians inside the redoubt. But that's it for Allied turn 5. The French have arrived in some numbers. Let's see if they can swing it with a mighty counterattack. So the combat is getting frenetic here. We did it mostly off camera because there was a lot of fighting going on. So let's start off with the shooting. The artillery fired at the Austrian column here. They passed their save, but they were disordered. The Bavarians fired at the Cuirassiers, didn't cause any casualties or disorder, so that was very lucky for the Cuirassiers, and it's looking a little bit dicey for those Bavarians next turn. Over here, the Hussars set to charge with their initiative order, and this unit of Hussars charged through at the unit of Russian infantry. You can see the Russian infantry have moved forward, the Hussars have moved back. We'll come to how that happened later. So we've got, that was the moving. Now we come to the combat. What happened here was the Russians managed to do their enfilading fire on the Hussars as they charged past them, and that meant that they caused 2 casualties. Dan's very unlucky with these dice, with his saving throws this turn. Very unlucky. Because in combat, despite inflicting 3 casualties on the Hussars, they managed to, on the Russian infantry, and they managed to push those Hussars back. So that was quite a good performance there. Over here, the French column drove into the Austrians. They took 3 casualties each, but that meant that the French were shaken. The Austrians aren't, because they have a large unit. And they have 4 casualties. So, and then over here, an entire battalion of French light infantry charged a small unit of Jaegers. The Jaegers managed to beat them off, but not in that way, obviously. So, there we go. That was the end of French turn 6. The heavy cavalry are available for the French, but they did not roll to come on the battlefield. The Allies have 2 more turns to clear the field. There's a lot of French over here. Let's see how it goes, because they've got some Cuirassiers of their own. Let's see if they can arrive this turn.
If you win, you keep it.
That's right, yeah. If you win the combat, you keep your 3+. So we have done the shooting and the moving here. The guard have moved forward. I've not moved them yet. I will do it in the down turn. But that's pretty much it, apart from the cuirassiers charged here, and they were countercharged by the hussars. Now, the Bavarians, they had a clear shot at the cuirassiers because this infantry battalion hadn't moved up yet. So they did their crossing fire and disordered the cuirassiers, although they caused no casualties. Now, what's happened here is the unit that was here was disordered. I've double disordered those by doing a disordered retreat. And that meant that the area was clear for this battalion to come forward. They needed 2 moves to charge, and despite stern words from the Tsar, they only got 1 move forward. So they are now in point-blank range of those Bavarians. Let's hope that they can weather the storm of fire. But I thought we would do the combat in this turn live. So I'm going to let Dan decide which order we do the combats in. So where would you like to start then?
The Jaegers first.
Start with the Jaegers. So the Jaegers in the woods here. Now I should say both of the combats over here were draws. So the French column goes first. They get 6 dice. And Dan's going to roll, hitting on 4s. He's going to roll for 4 hits. Not bad at all. I'm going to use my Austrian dice for these. I'm saving on a 3+ because I am in cover. I take 1 casualty. So that's not bad. It's not bad at all. They've got 4 attacks back. They're also hitting on 4s. For 1 hit. Oh dear. Now the French save that hit. So they are also supported to the rear. So the French win that combat. Let's see what happens to the Jaegers. Oh dear, they explode. So I'll be back in a second after I've taken those off. So that was the end of the Jaeger combat. So now we're going to do the French Light Infantry Battalion versus the Austrians. Now this was also a draw, but the French Light Infantry are shaken. So they are hitting the French on a 5+. Sorry, the Austrians on a 5+. Whereas the Austrians are going to be hitting back on a 4. No hits from the French though, oh dear. Now the Austrians, they roll their 8 dice. Dan is coming to understand the frustration of facing Austrians. They are hitting on 4s. And that's a good roll. They hit 5 times. So 5 4-ups from the French. They only fail 1, so that's not bad. Now looking at the support over here, the French are supported to the rear and the flank with the artillery. The Austrians are supported to the rear, back there. So it's actually a draw, the combat there. But because the French are shaken, they take a test -1 because they've got 1 excess casualty. They roll a 5, so that is they retreat. Is it 1 move or 2 moves?
1 move if I can't.
1 move, 2 moves if you can't. They should be able to move 1 move though. So we'll come back after we've moved those guys. The follow-up moves are done at the end of the turn. Come to it, this is the combat I've been waiting for the whole game because I finally get to use some actual decent cavalry. It's been so long since I've used good cavalry. It's going to be a disaster, isn't it? Clearly. So the Hussars get to go first. They are hitting me on a 3+ with 6 dice because they charge. So 2 hits there, so that's not bad. Now the cuirassiers have a save of 3+ for their mighty iron cuirassiers. And they pass them both. Fantastic. Now I've got 8 attacks back, but because I was disordered from the closing fire...
2 extra for your march.
I get 10 attacks back. That's even better than I thought. But because I was disordered by the crossing fire, I'm hitting on -1, so I'm hitting on 4s instead of 3s. So I've got 9 dice here. I'm going to have to re-roll one of these. I'll use a Russian dice. So there we go. So I'm hitting on 4s. And that was one of the Austrian ones. So that's not great, but not bad. 4 hits against the Hussars. Now the Hussars have already taken 2 casualties. So I don't need them to fail a huge number of them. I have to confess.
So that's 2 excess.
So I failed 3. So 2 excess. Oh, yes, I should have said, sorry, that the other unit in the brigade were fired at by the square over there, and they retreated off the board. So they are, sorry, how many excess casualties? 2 excess. So this is a... well, you have to support, I'm afraid, if you can. Yes. So, unfortunately, they do lose that combat. But don't roll a 6 or less. It doesn't matter. No, he rolls a 7. So the Hussars move back 1 move, and my cuirassiers can follow up. We'll fight another round of combat. Back to the edge of the board. Now, the cuirassiers are still disordered, so they're still going to be hitting on 4s. The Hussars are now shaken and no longer charging, so they're hitting on 5s. So let's see what they can do with their 6 dice. So, well, it's 2 hits, was that? Yep. And can the Austrian cavalry save them? Oh, one goes through. Well, I can't really complain at that. They've had a good run of not taking any casualties. So they've got 10 attacks back. Ooh, yeah, it's a lot of dice. I'm not using to roll on this many dice. And they are hitting on 4s because they are following up, but they are disordered. Much better this time for 7 hits.
So 3 excess.
And 3 excess, so it's another test for the Hussars. They're going to need to roll very high. It's not really going to matter what they roll, to be honest. So they are now off the table with a 4. And that's pretty much the end of the Hussar Brigade. The other unit over here is already shaken, but we're going to allow them to rally that off if required. So that's the end of the Allied turn 7, and a mighty turn it was. The Hussar Brigade have basically been swept from the field by the Austrian heavy cavalry. That's absolutely no denigration of Dan. They are a scary, scary unit.
That's what they're meant to do.
Absolutely, yeah. No, they are terrifying. Now, over here, we haven't moved the French yet, actually, because I forgot. I believe the light infantry are going to occupy the woods. Is that right? And this battalion here, do you just want to move up? Say again?
You won the combat. No.
Oh, I didn't know. Sorry. Yes, no, I did. Yes, you're right.
No, it's a draw.
Yeah, but you fell back. So, yeah, I can follow up, but we'll see. So, we're just going to come back after we've done that. But that's the end of Allied turn 7. There's 1 turn left for the Allies. Let's see if they can make that final turn count. So, we come to pretty much the end of the French turn 7. They've had quite a bit of reorganising. A unit's fallen back off. I've taken a few of the units off the table that aren't going to take part in it anymore. You may have heard the landlord of the club in the background telling us that he wants us out of here. So we've sized up the battlefield a little bit. The French have attacked here, and we've got 1 combat to do. Before we do, we've noticed that the French heavy cavalry brigade have turned up here, but we've got this combat at the end here, up the road. The French have charged. So the Austrians are going to do their closing fire. They get 2 dice due to their special rule, and they're hitting on 3s for 1 hit. No disorders. So that's what I really wanted, but let's see. Yep, no, that's saved. And now the French get to do their 6 attacks, hitting on 3s. 4 hits, and the Austrians saving on 3s as well. Ugh, 3 go through. They are not shaken yet because they are a large unit. They have 8 attacks back. Scary stuff. They are hitting on 4s. For 6 hits. The French saving on 3s. 2 go through. So the French cause 3 casualties. They are supported to, let's have a look, to the flank by the troops in the woods and the troops behind them. So 2 more supports there. The Austrians, they cause 2 casualties. They are supported to their flank and to their rear. So they score 4. So we've seen here that it's the static combat res that's added to them, but it's actually the casualties that make the difference here. The Austrians, they roll. Let's see what we can get. We need high. A 7. They have not taken any excess casualties, so they stand and fight. So, not a huge amount happened in most of the Allied turn 8. The Cuirassiers charged the Carabiniers, who countercharged. And finally, at last, the Austrian Cuirassiers charged the Redoubts. They did that on an initiative move, so even I couldn't mess that one up. So, we're going to roll these live on camera. One of the things here is it's not looking great for the Austrians or the Allies to really break through the French, but they've got 2 big cavalry units in. Let's see how it goes. Let's start off with this one down here. This may look like it's the main event, the Cuirassiers on Cuirassiers, but it's not actually. I'm expecting the cavalry charge on the Redoubt to be a lot more impactful. So let's see how it goes. Now, we both charged. I did manage to do a crossing fire, but it didn't cause any casualties. In fact, I didn't even hit due to the Russians having -1 to hit with their shooty shoot. So I've got 10 dice here. Let's clear that out. Oh, I should say over here that I saw off the last of the Hussar Brigade, that square firing, causing 2 casualties and a disorder, and seeing off those Hussars. So let's see how we get on. So 10 attacks from the Cuirassiers. No rerolls, but I am hitting on 3s. For 7 hits. So that's 7 3-up saves by the Carabiniers. They are wearing cuirasses, so they're pretty solid. They are also supporters, so I need Dan to fail these.
Yeah, 4.
Fails 4, so he is going to be shaken. So that's something handy. I'll Put that dice there to remind us. He's no slouch, though. He's got 8 attacks, is it? 9 attacks for Carabineers. Okie dokie. Good job they're not up against the Guard Cossacks. For 6 hits, is that? So not bad at all. 6 saves from the Cuirassiers. I'm going to need to roll well here. I'll take rolling average. But that's rolling average is good for me. Oh, I take 1 casualty. So that's an absolutely crushing victory for the Austrian Cuirassiers there. They caused 4 casualties. They received 1, so we are 4 against 1. The French Carabineers, they are supported to their flank, possibly the rear. It doesn't really matter because they will still lose. Now, they took 4 casualties, so this test is at -1. They are 1 over their stamina. Oh, a double 1. The Carabineers, the Carabineers have a history of not being very good against the Russians. The Cuirassiers that were supporting them, they stand. But the Carabineers are Offskis.
Argument's sake, the ones behind would be around as well.
Yeah, they stick around as well. I wasn't going to say we'll roll for those. So these guys are off. We're going to come back after I've removed those from the table. So having seen off the Carabineers, the Russian Cuirassiers now overrun into this unit of French Cuirassiers who don't get to react. They don't get to countercharge. So the Russians, the Austrian Cuirassiers, thank you, Dan. The Austrian Cuirassiers get to go first, rolling their 10 dice, hitting on 3s. For, another 8 hits. Very tasty. Now these guys are also saving on 3s. Let's see if their armour is better than the Carabineers' armour.
2.
It is, yeah. I mean, that is better. They get to attack back with 9 dice, I believe.
I think they're the same.
They are. Carabineers are the same as Cuirassiers, yeah. So it's 9 dice, and these guys are going to be hitting on 4s, though, because they didn't charge. Doesn't make a huge amount. Well, it does make a little bit of difference. It stops 2 hits going through. So let's see if I can save these. 3+. Oh, 1 goes through. So let's have a look at the situation here. Now, these guys are supported once here. So they get +1 for their static res. Now, there's another infantry battalion here. They can support. Would you like them to support the Cuirassiers, Dan?
It's the one I have the chance of winning, so
I think you've already won the combat, though, haven't you?
no, it's a draw.
Right, okay, it's a draw at the moment.
If you've got 1 more casualty, 2 casualties to your 1.
Oh, of course,
I have 1 support, which brings it level.
Yep.
And then I'll force the win by...
Okay, no, that sounds good to me. So what Dan's done there is he's made that decision because it's a guaranteed victory, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So, I mean, you know, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times out of 30. So 1 in 6 chance of that huge unit of Cuirassiers exploding. Definitely worth it. Let's see if they do. A 7, they don't. They fall back 1 move, and the French Cuirassiers can either follow up themselves, or they can stay where they are.
Yeah, I'll follow up.
Follow up, okie dokie. So we'll do that off camera, and we'll come back for the main event. So we've moved them back to the woods there, and we're going to go over to the redoubt for the main event. Now, Dan hasn't done his closing fire yet, so we're going to do that. They've got 3 shots. They are at point-blank range, so they're hitting on 3s. He needs a 6, really.
Nope.
No 6s, but he gets 2 hits. And I'm saving on a 3+. I do have my cuirassiers. 1 goes through, so it's not terrible. It's not terrible. Now, Dan has 6 attacks from his Bavarians. They are hitting me on 4s. No steady line for these guys, I'm afraid, Dan.
Because you're covering.
Oh, sorry, yes, he is hitting me on 5s. I will be at -1 to hit him, though, because he is in fortifications.
4-1.
So 1 hit. In fact, no, you hit me on 4s because you're in a defended position. But it doesn't actually make a difference. 3s. Oh, go through. So I've got my 10 attacks back. I'm normally hitting on 3s, but this time it's going to be 4s because he is in a defended position. No tough fighter for these boys. So 5 hits, which is average. I can't complain of that too much. They're on a 3+ save because they are in fortifications. He takes 1. So it turns out, actually, that it makes a difference. Well, it kind of makes a difference. So it's 1 casualty each. Now, Dan burned his support from this unit on the cavalry combat, which I think was the right thing to do. But as it stands, as it would be, we've caused 1 casualty each. I'm supported to my flank. Dan's unit is shaken, so they will be testing anyway. So actually, it was doubly the right thing to do. But there's no negatives to this. A 7, they carry on fighting. Now, that's huge. I needed to break through then, really. So that's the end of Allied turn 8. That's going to be the last Allied turn. Oh, no, sorry, no, we've got one more combat to do. We've got the combat over here on the road. We'll come back after we've done that, and then we'll crack on with French turn 8, because we are running short of time. So, the Bavarians that were holding the redoubt exploded, and the unit that was supporting them fell back. So, the Graziers have charged into them. We're going to have another round of combat. So, we're going to do the Bavarians first. They don't get to closing fire, but they do get 6 attacks, and they're hitting on 4s. For one hit. I have taken an extra casualty, so this could shake me. It doesn't, though. So fighting back now. I'm hitting on 3s this time, because I was victorious in charging. So that is 6 hits. 6 hits there. Saving on a 4+. 1. So, unfortunately, the... Sorry?
It's 5 because it's cavalry.
Oh, sorry, yes, you're right. Yeah. So, did you hit me then?
No.
Oh, sorry. How many casualties? You're not shaking, okay. So it's just a base test. They do retire off the board there. So with that, we have reached the end of the game. We've had a bit of a tidy up of units that weren't going to take part because we are being rushed away, I'm afraid. And I'm going to say I think this is a bit of a victory for the Allies. They have created a bit of a crescent, although the French are punching up on the left-hand side. They have lost the centre. There is a unit of Austrian cuirassiers marauding around in the back. They can actually turn to face whichever direction they want to this turn. They would be facing the rear of those cuirassiers, so it would be very sad for them the next turn. And one thing that we haven't seen in this battle are the 3 regiments of Russian cuirassiers. So I think that's going to be an Allied win. I think Dan's fully appreciating now how frustrating it is.
I appreciate how frustrating playing French is when they don't turn up until...
Well, there you go. It's frustrating when you're against these extra stamina units, the Russians and the Austrians. But I hope you enjoyed the game as much as we enjoyed playing it. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.